Giant mechs, perhaps one of the staples of the tokusatsu genre. The image of a giant mech fighting with the kaiju is perhaps just as iconic as King Kong on the Empire State Building or Godzilla attacking a city. Now, there have been many media that have been culprits of perpetuating this image, but none of them are more popular than Power Rangers and Godzilla respectively, with perhaps the most badass characters that fall under this category being the Dragonzord and Showa MechaGodzilla. Both of these guys are the subject of very iconic moments in their own independent series, and as it turns out, this debate is very prominent, with even Death Battle getting their hands on this one. So I figured that it would fit right at home with the various debates that we like to discuss here on the channel. Obviously, you guys aren't no strangers to my Godzilla scaling, as I've scaled the IP over a dozen times at this point, but Power Rangers, that's something new. And I just gotta say, after looking at the Dragonzord's actual scaling, and yeah, I can conclude Death Battle was wrong about Kiryu beating him in a fight, as he's just a straight up monster. Hence why I put him up against the much stronger Showa MechaGodzilla. Oh, and for the new guys who have just found the channel, yeah, Showa MechaGodzilla is much stronger than Kiryu, but is he stronger than the Dragonzord? That's the real question. Before we answer that, be sure to like and support the video, as they help the channel grow exponentially. I want to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and frankly, we're really close. So if you're new here, be sure to join the community, or at least consider it. And if you're an old subscriber, first of all, thank you, but on top of that, I would like to inform you that I have moved my operations to Instagram and TikTok, where you can see my slideshow scale / debates, and on top of that, you can find yourself eligible to see my shorts earlier than they would be on YouTube. So if you find yourself interested in these platforms, my links will be in the description down below. But with all that e-begging finally out of the way, let's answer the question that you clicked the video to find out. Let's start off with the OG this time. So seeing as how the Showa Godzilla era predates Power Rangers by almost 20 years, let's go over Godzilla's mechanical doppelganger first. While most iterations of these guys find themselves to be man-made mechanical creations that were crafted for the purpose of defending Japan from Godzilla, the Showa MechaGodzilla is a lot different, as he was built by aliens for the purpose of world domination. And in fact, he was the bad guy, and Godzilla was the hero who was trying to save everyone. Showa Godzilla, as you know, has a plethora of feats and phases that we have to go through, but luckily for MechaGodzilla, he appears extremely late into the era, as he's the subject of the last two films in the Showa era pretty much, and because of that, he scales to Godzilla's highest quantifiable ends, not his actual peak in Destroy All Monsters, but you know, the quantifiable stuff before we can say that he just got stronger over the 20 years that take place in between Terra MechaGodzilla and Destroy All Monsters. But before we get into the super crazy stuff, let's go over his lower end stuff, as well as MechaGodzilla's own feats and scaling that he gets from lore, as he has a lot of inverse, so let's go over some of his statements. MechaGodzilla in his first film alone is stated to be stronger than King Ghidorah and Hedorah. I'll talk about what that means later, but I want to point out that MechaGodzilla would only be stronger than King Ghidorah up to this point on a chronological level, as he probably doesn't scale to the Ghidorah that we saw at the end of Destroy All Monsters, as that film takes place 20 years after Terra MechaGodzilla. But every other version of Ghidorah that we saw in the time period, yeah, it's safe to say that MechaGodzilla is probably stronger. MechaGodzilla was designed after the strongest monster at the time being Godzilla, and is considered Showa Godzilla's strongest opponent up until Destroy All Monsters, which is consistent with my previous premise. And he also serves as the first monster that Godzilla had to power up against. As well, yeah, at this point, Godzilla is no stranger to team-ups, but he was never amped on top of that. And honestly, I don't even blame Godzilla for trying to get a new amp, as the last time they fought, his atomic breath really barely scratched them. And the only reason why the Earth wasn't in ruins was because after Godzilla and MechaGodzilla stalemated in a beam clash, the force of said beam clash led to both parties being very injured after the fact. So it's safe to say that MechaGodzilla is big strong. But with that inverse out the way, let's get into some of the quantifiable calculations. As you would imagine, most of the Showa scaling comes from pretty much Ghidorah, as MechaGodzilla should upscale every version of Ghidorah except the one shown in Destroy All Monsters, due to him having much more impressive statements and feats in verse, such as drawing blood and beating a Godzilla who was stated to be stronger than a version of the King of Monsters that could prove to tussle with Ghidorah. And while he doesn't scale to the strongest version of Ghidorah once again, he still has a lot of impressive scaling from his earlier days. Due to his nature alone, he's a bona fide planet destroyer, with a lot of things just stating this to be the case, including his debut film where it's elaborated that he destroyed the planet Venus. And while the time frame is unknown and it was a surface wipe, we have a lot of implications to assert that it was quick, with some stuff saying that the event happened in less than a day, with other guides just saying that it happened in the blink of an eye or even instantaneously. Whether you think Ghidorah did this with his gravity beams or his physical AP doesn't really matter, as Godzilla can endure both forms of attack from Ghidorah, and once again MG can draw blood from this very same Godzilla but stronger pretty much. Normal surface wiping is a multi-continental feat, and seeing as how due to the nature of how quickly everything was evaporated and the planet as seen in Zone Fighter looks almost scorched and even smoking still, it's very likely to say that Ghidorah was able to perform this feat with his gravity beams. This is notable as said projectile's destruction seems to operate to a subatomic extent, as they are stated to destroy gravity, meaning that these mere surface wiping attacks get bumped up to a ludicrous extent, with calculations that get this feat anywhere from large planetary to even dwarf star level. Keep in mind Ghidorah is confirmed to be outputting this level of energy for fun, so logically when the same beams are being used against a titan who's relative to him, they would be more powerful / passionate attacks, so Godzilla can endure planetary to dwarf star level plus attacks and just shrug him off. Yeah, it hurts him, but you know, it's not making him bleed like a certain guy that I know. This level of attack potency is consistent as the same gravity beams are stated to be the most powerful weapons in the universe, which will put them above weapons such as the Gyarago nukes, which can blow up entire gas giants, like completely vaporize them instantly, with these weapons getting calculated to output destructive energy to a large star level plus extent. And if you think using a statement to scale Ghidorah above these weapons is kinda goony, and yeah, that's fair enough, but that doesn't really matter as the show kinda just does it by itself, as these aliens would later set their sights on the planet Earth with the intent to destroy it verbatim out of their mouths themselves, and rather than throwing their gas giant busting nuclear bombs, they send Ghidorah and say that he's their best prospect for destruction. So literally the narrative of Zone Fighter itself is consistent with that statement. Stack that on top of the very casual dwarf star level AP that I previously mentioned, and I think it's fair enough to personally scale Ghidorah at least to dwarf star level. But this is even more consistent as Ghidorah is also stated to convert cosmic rays into pure energy, which he literally just eats. These phenomena are literally spawned from star explosions, and Ghidorah can literally harness that energy and stuff like that, which gets calculated to solar system level. This is consistent as he's also stated to be invincible in space, which would mean that he wouldn't only upscale the gas giant busting nukes, he'd likely no-sell them. Seeing as how no-selling an attack shouldn't be that far off from one-shots gaps, he'd actually at worst upscale the destruction of the planet Peaceland 10 times over, granting him solar system level scaling. Also, this is kind of a post-editing thing, but I also forgot about the statement that just says blatantly that Ghidorah possesses more destructive power than any supernova, which is some more solar system level implications. This level of attack potency is consistent as Hedorah, another monster MechaGodzilla is just stated to be stronger than, is directly compared to supernovas in space. But moving on to the high-end stuff for now, we're gonna have to hop right into Zone Fighter, as the titular character can fight a kaiju who can generate fourth dimensional worlds and spaces that are noted to be in a different space-time that cannot be recorded on radars due to their dimensionality. And a Gyarago minion can literally generate these spaces and is just stated to be on this level of dimensionality himself. And Zone Fighter can literally shoot him up and kill him casually, granting this guy universal plus scaling, as he can significantly affect fourth dimensional beings and structures. MechaGodzilla is stated to be the strongest robot in the universe, putting him above Gigan and Jericho, who themselves have shown relativity to Zone Fighter, and he would just blatantly upscale the Ghidorah and Godzilla from this time period as well, as he's stated to be stronger than the prior, and he can just draw blood from the latter. So as you can see, while MechaGodzilla in his film doesn't have any significant individual feats in scaling, he kind of just scales that high due to the versions of the characters that he fights. Kind of like a Dragon Ball Super Broly situation where he kind of just boxes with post-tournament power Goku and Vegeta, who have their own vast scaling chains. But getting back to MechaGodzilla now, he can also endure his own AP amplified 10 times, as he can relatively shrug off his own being amped by King Caesar and then proceed to piece him up casually as well. So MechaGodzilla ain't no glass cannon either. From there, MechaGodzilla would only get 5 times stronger, as in Terra MechaGodzilla just stated that he got that much stronger verbatim, meaning that overall at worst, MechaGodzilla would scale anywhere from large planetary to dwarf star, to solar system, to even universal plus, at least 5 times over. Moving on to his speed now, he would find himself to have relativistic plus to faster than light combat speeds and reaction time, as he can wrestle with Showa Godzilla, who is stronger and faster than previous versions of himself who have consistently reacted to light speed attacks. MechaGodzilla himself can also react to his own light-based attacks and Godzilla's atomic breath respectively. But for higher ends, Godzilla's atomic breath can tag the Black Hole Planet 3 alien ships, which can travel from the Black Hole Planet 3, which is being subbed up by a massive black hole that contains hundreds of stars. For reference, the closest supermassive black hole to our Earth is at the center of our own galaxy, which is 26,000 light years away. So these ships casually being able to travel that distance back and forth would grant these constructs MFTL plus, speed and travel speed, and Godzilla kind of just scales. MechaGodzilla himself was also constructed on this planet, so it's safe to say that their ships would also scale to MechaGodzilla's travel speed, granting the mechanical terror by extension MFTL plus travel speeds, as well as combat speeds and reaction time, as he can just dodge the atomic breath, which can hit these ships. For consistency in this level of speed, he just upscales Zone Fighter, who can fight on par with King Ghidorah while in space. Ghidorah during this time period could fly from the Space Hunter Nebula M to Earth in around a couple minutes, a feat over 600 billion times the speed of light. So MechaGodzilla wouldn't only be incredibly powerful, he would be incredibly fast as well. But that's not the end of it either, as he has some other things that we can talk about, such as his plethora of different weapons and technology, which can be rapidly fired at once. He has a force field which can burn Godzilla, but going back to the weaponry for a sec, here's a bunch of scans for MechaGodzilla that I just found. I'll put them on screen and put some nice music, and you can just read everything that he has. So yeah. So overall, it's safe to say that MechaGodzilla is a beast with great attack potency, great speed, and great technology. This guy, while not the strongest Showa Godzilla enemy, heck, he's not even the second strongest, as yeah, unironically Titanosaurus is stronger than him. Just gonna put that out there because I feel like he needs a lot of respect. I know some people that think that Gigan, King Caesar can beat him, which, let you know, they can't. But despite being in third place, Showa MechaGodzilla is truly terrifying. Now today, as previously mentioned, we're going to be scaling a new IP on the channel, being Power Rangers, or more specifically, the Dragonzord. Before we get into that though, I want to use sources that are only canon to the television show, which would mean that there's a fair amount of stuff that wouldn't really find itself to be applicable, though the comics will be acknowledged. But we'll get into that later. Like MechaGodzilla, the Dragonzord scales to a lot of feats in the verse, due to the characters that he boxes with, such as the Megazord itself. This is an incredible feat from an inverse perspective, kind of like how MechaGodzilla draws blood from the third version of Showa Godzilla and can fight on par with the second strongest version of Showa Godzilla. So it's kind of like that. The Megazord is stated to be above all technology in the verse, which would upscale him off Alpha 1, who can endure the destruction of a supernova. And yeah, this feat is exclusive to the comics, but the writer of said comic has confirmed that the comics are canon to the television show, despite the difference in time period. So maybe at worst, this would mean that the comics are just some similar timeline adjacent or similar to the main canon, or just straight up their canon. This supernova level of scaling is consistent, as the Dragonzord has shown the ability to just blatantly overpower Rita Repulsa's magic. Rita is a character whose forces can just blatantly planet bust on screen, and her magic should scale to forces that have been shown to create solar eclipses, with both of these feats getting her capabilities in the large planetary to dwarf star level ranges. Rita herself in the past, before the events of the main show, is also noted to have started an interstellar war where planets, moons, and even stars were destroyed in the conflict. Keep in mind the planet Earth in the Power Rangers universe is considered to be verbatim tiny, so it's fair enough to say that the planets that Rita destroyed in her conflict would have been cosmic bodies of relative stature to constructs such as Jupiter or Saturn. Plus there's also the fact that these things are just stated to have obliterated stars, so there's that as well, with the conflict also being stated to have upset entire solar systems. Now obviously we don't know how she destroyed these celestial bodies or solar systems, but seeing as how the Dragonzord can box with tech stated to be the greatest in the universe and can just blatantly overpower Rita Repulsa's magic, it's fair enough to assume that the Dragonzord would just scale to this stuff automatically, granting him the same large planetary to large star to even possibly solar system levels of AP off the bat, depending on how much you think he upscales Rita's magic in the first place, as they just obliterate stars, or if you think that upset solar systems means that, she destroyed them. The Dragonzord has also shown the ability to break through and destroy constructs that have trapped the regular Megazord and by extension kind of just left them trapped and powerless. For some more inverse now, the Dragonzord can box with the White Tiger Zord, who himself is relative to the Thunder Megazord, who is confirmed to be unrivaled in the entire universe, as well as just straight up being called invincible, which is some more consistency for the Dragonzord upscaling the previously mentioned Rita Repulsa stuff. But more importantly, this scaling chain also establishes relativity between the Dragon and Thunder Megazord, who due to his own inverse statements would upscale the Ultra Zord, who could defeat Lakar, a character who possessed more energy than Zordon has ever sensed, with his power being stated to be something that Rita could only wish to possess. Getting to Rita's own higher end stuff now, she's a character who has spells that can weaken the main universe, as well as realms that are stated to be beyond time. She can also crack portals in space-time with her cosmic energy. The Lakar above Rita chain would also upscale him off a pocket dimension that contains infinite energy. And for the goons who are gonna say, oh well, the scan says that it's only almost infinite, well, I mean 1% of infinity is just still infinity, so almost infinity is just infinity. For consistency in this range of power now, if you remember, Lakar is also above anything that Zordon has ever faced or witnessed, which would include the power eggs, which are said to contain a universe of power, and in the comics are just straight up confirmed to be 4D. And the Dragonzord scales relative to mechs who could defeat a being who stated to be just above all of that entirely, granting the Dragonzord anywhere from high universal to possibly even 4D to 5th dimensional power. As for speed now, all of the Zords in the verse are manually piloted by the Rangers, so they just kind of automatically scale to any of the Rangers' feats. This is important because the Rangers, while even being unmorphed, could react to the Tengens, who could travel from the moon to a different solar system in a very quick manner, granting the Zords MFTL plus combat speeds and reaction time. For more direct stuff now, Tommy Oliver, the pilot of the Dragonzord, can keep up with Lord Zed, who is a character who has shown relativity to Andros, who can casually fight at the same massively faster than light speeds. But for higher ends now, he should be able to upscale Lakar, who can travel to different space times via sheer speeds, which by extension would just grant both parties infinite speed, which is speed beyond the speed formula, as you can travel distances that kind of just cease to be distances, as distance is a quantifiable metric. You could be 100 quintillion dillion times faster than the speed of light per second, and it would be impossible for you to travel to another space-time, as it's an entirely separate reality. So the fact that the Dragonzord scales to characters who can make that trip via sheer speed should go to show you how fast he is. And for another speed end, he upscales Rita Repulsa's magic, which can weaken realms beyond time just verbatim, granting him by extension immeasurable speed. So between these two mechs, who do I think would win? Well, at first glance, the lower and mid ends are pretty similar, both getting into the planetary to solar system level ranges via upscaling stuff via like lore and statements and feats like that of the sort. But once you start to get to the higher ends, I think it's pretty clear that one of these guys scales to set higher ends and then some much more consistently. If you buy into the Showa MechaGodzilla Uni Plus scaling chain, then unironically he would scale into that level like over 1 billion times over. I've discussed this on multiplier system in other videos, and I'll even put a 36,000 times power method in the comment section down below. You can get pretty crazy with the Showa multipliers. But while MechaGodzilla should upscale Zone Fighter's destruction of a universal plus space, the Dragonzord just kind of hulks out and rips through constructs that could potentially ripple and distort dimensions beyond time. And like MechaGodzilla, he also upscales a universal power on a 4th dimensional level. So yeah. There's also the topic of speed. In terms of quantifiable stuff, MechaGodzilla should be faster than the Dragonzord. But that's the thing. The Dragonzord has much higher speed ends than, even MechaGodzilla's best stuff. And yeah, I could kind of argue that Showa MechaGodzilla would be in the same level of AP and speed as the Dragonzord, but it would involve kind of scaling to Heisei era kaiju, which I don't really want to use that, as all that crossover stuff isn't really indicative of the original product of the Showa era. And plus, if I did that, I'd have to get into some of the crossover scaling that Power Rangers have. These guys have met the Justice League, so this is not really a game that I want to play. There's also the fact that exactly like Showa MechaGodzilla, the Dragonzord has a wide arsenal of weapons and missiles and stuff of the sort. And due to the AP and speed scaling, these weapons would also be strong stronger and much faster as well. So with that being said, I think that the Dragonzord would beat MechaGodzilla from the Showa era. So yeah, I don't know what Death Battle was smoking when they said that Kiryu could beat him. You know, I legitimately don't even know how they came up to that conclusion when this stuff exists. But with that being said, who do you think would win this matchup? Do you think that I was wanking the Dragonzord and downplaying MechaGodzilla? Or was this matchup about what you expected? I know that I put a couple of polls up and you guys were just not feeling the Dragonzord at all. It was actually pretty funny. But before I truly dip out, I would like to thank two guys, being Dr. Kooks, who really gave me a lot of Power Rangers Inverse, and he was a great help to this video. And I'd also like to thank the Divine Destroyer, as he also gave me a lot of Power Rangers Inverse, and he even linked a couple of threads that were extremely helpful for these videos. I want to point them out because they didn't really want me to shout them out. They didn't really care for that. They just kind of wanted to help. And, you know, truly, I appreciate that. And if any of you guys ever want to help me scale anything for a potential video that you want to see, be sure to hit me up on Discord. You know, the link's in the description, and you can just add me and stuff like that. But as always, I'll see you guys next week. But until then, stay big G fans.